My name is Mark, and I spend way too much time thinking about how we make choices. Or how we think we do. Ever notice how the most expensive decisions of your life usually don't even feel like decisions? Think about that for a second. It's a Saturday morning in the suburbs. Sun's out, coffee's in the cup holder, and I'm pulling into one of those brand new housing developments. You know the ones. Pristine asphalt, flags waving in the wind, and a row of model homes that look like they were ripped out of a magazine. I wasn't there to buy. I didn't even have a pre-approval letter in my pocket. I was just checking it out. Just a casual stroll to see what the market looked like. I told myself, I'm just looking. Now, look, I'm not a stupid guy. I'm not struggling for cash. And it's not like there was a high-pressure salesman breathing down my neck or forcing a pin into my hand. I was totally relaxed. But then, things started to feel weird. The first house they showed me, the standard model, it was fine. A bit cramped, maybe. The view was basically the neighbor's siding. It felt a little depressing. Then, they showed me the select model. It had a slightly better kitchen, but the price jumped by $100,000 for no clear reason. I remember looking at the sticker price and thinking, who on earth would pay that much for an extra closet? And then, we walked into the premium model. It was stunning. High ceilings, a backyard that opened into the woods, the works. But here was the kicker. It was only about 20 grand more than that overpriced middle house. Suddenly, the most expensive house on the lot didn't feel expensive anymore. I didn't pull out a calculator. I didn't check the comps in the area. I just had this feeling. I started talking to my wife, using that voice we all use when we're trying to sound smart. I said, look, we're going to live here for 20 years, right? I mean, the price difference is basically a couple of Starbucks coffees a month over the life of the list. Mortgage. It's the logical choice. Why settle for less and regret it later? It's almost embarrassing to look back on now, because years later, it finally hit me. I never once stopped to ask, do I even need a house this big? Nobody lied to me. Nobody twisted my arm. But the way I was thinking had been mapped out before I even parked my car. The question I was answering in my head that day, which of these three houses is the best value, wasn't my question. It was theirs. And that's the part that keeps me up at night. If a massive life-altering decision, like where you live, can be steered that easily, what about the small stuff? What about the car, the phone, the sensible retirement plan? There's a trick, a very old, very quiet trick. And it only works if you're absolutely convinced that you're the one in the driver's seat. What if the most logical choice you've ever made was never actually your choice to begin with? It took me years to realize what had actually happened in that model home. At the time, I walked out of there feeling like a hero. I thought I was being the responsible adult, the guy who saw the value and made the smart, calculated move for his family's future. But looking back, the house wasn't the problem. The price wasn't even the problem. The real issue was much quieter than that. It was the way the question in my head shifted without me even noticing. Here's the part that's hard to admit. I didn't actually decide to spend more money. I didn't sit there and say, hey, I'd like to increase my debt by 6 figures today. I was just quietly reframed into it. It's like someone leaned over and subtly adjusted the lens on my camera until I was looking at a completely different landscape, all while I thought I was still focused on the same thing. This is the moment things get uncomfortable, because it's where your brain switches tracks. See, when I walked in, I was asking myself a very human, very grounded question. What do I actually need to live a good life? That's the home question. It's about space, comfort, and what fits my reality. But the second I saw those three options lined up against each other, the okay one, the bad deal one, and the premium one, the question in my head changed. It became, which of these options is the smartest deal? And that right there, that's the trap. The moment that switch flips, you aren't deciding based on your life anymore. You're deciding based on a menu. You've stopped looking at the world and started looking at the choices someone else curated for you. The second you stop asking what fits your life and start asking what fits the menu, you've already lost. I have to be honest with you. At the moment I made that choice, I felt great. I felt mature, like I was finally playing the game of life at a higher level, looking far into the horizon instead of just at my feet. I walked, but here's the part nobody tells you. That feeling of victory isn't because the decision was actually good for your bank account. It's because your brain just got a hit of its favorite drug. See, our brains are hardwired to absolutely loathe two things: missing out and feeling like we chose the quote-unquote lesser version of something. On the flip side, we have a deep, almost primal love for the feeling of being optimal. We want the version of the story where we don't have to look back and wonder, what if? And this is where the industry gets you. They aren't actually selling you a kitchen upgrade or a panoramic view. They are selling you emotional relief. They give you a way to escape the anxiety of making a bad choice by placing a ridiculous option right next to the one they actually want you to buy. Once you pick the one that looks smart by comparison, the tension vanishes. You feel safe. You feel like you've outsmarted the system. But then it hits you. This isn't just about houses. I started seeing this pattern everywhere, like a glitch in the code that you can't unsee once you notice it for the first time. It's in the car dealership when they tell you, look, you're already spending 40 grand. For another 3, you get the heated seats and the premium sound. It's just common sense. It's in the way we choose colleges, where we think, for just a little more debt, I get the prestige that lasts a lifetime. It's even in the way we're told to manage our retirement plans, where the aggressive option is framed as the only choice for anyone who isn't a coward. And this is where things get really uncomfortable. It's not just about one bad purchase. It's about a pattern of behavior that starts to define you. If you're always choosing the smartest deal on the menu instead of what you actually need, you aren't just spending more money. Your personality is being slowly edited. You're becoming a person who responds to cues rather than a person who acts on intentions. It's not one bad choice. It's a personality that's being slowly edited. Here's the thing about that house, or that car, or that premium choice. The cost isn't just the number on the closing statement. There's a much heavier price that doesn't show up on a bank statement, and it starts to bleed into your Sunday nights and your Tuesday mornings. You start to feel this invisible pressure. Your life begins to feel tight, not because you're failing, and not because you're being reckless. On paper, you're doing everything right. You're making more money than you did 5 years ago. You're hitting your milestones, and you're picking the smart options. But then you look around and wonder why you feel like you're running just to stay in place. Why does life feel so much more expensive when you haven't actually changed your lifestyle that much? That's when it hits you. Nothing went wrong. Life just quietly got heavier. Every time we're nudged into that better option, we're adding a layer of weight, a higher mortgage, a bigger insurance premium, a more complex maintenance schedule. We didn't choose the weight. We just chose the option that looked the best on the menu. And now we're carrying it. But why? Why do we keep falling for it? When I'm being honest with myself, it's because thinking is hard and feeling is easy. We are terrified of 3 things: making a mistake, looking cheap in front of people we care about, and having to live with that nagging what if later on. We've been conditioned to believe that spending more is the same thing as being safe. If I buy the top tier version, I've fixed the problem forever. I don't have to worry about it anymore. The truth is, spending more feels safer than thinking harder. An upgrade isn't usually about buying more value. It's about buying your way out of an uncomfortable emotion. We pay a premium just to avoid the friction of asking ourselves if we actually needed the thing in the first place. We buy the quote best deal so we can stop thinking about the choice. I've had to sit with some pretty uncomfortable questions lately. I look at the things I own, the bills I pay, and I have to ask, am I actually buying things, or am I just buying reassurance? Am I building a life that I actually enjoy living? Or am I just spending my days trying to avoid the feeling of regret? Because here's the trap. At some point, you stop choosing your life. You start choosing the version that looks hardest to regret. You pick the safe upgrade, the smart house, the premium plan, not because they make you happy, but because they're the hardest to criticize. We spend our freedom to buy a sense of certainty that doesn't even exist. So, how do you stop the machine from making your choices for you? I don't have a 10-step checklist, but I've started practicing a few things that help me breathe again. First, I try to decide what I need before I ever see the menu. If I walk into a store, or a car lot, or a house, the menu is designed to move that line. If I don't bring my own scale, I'm forced to use theirs. Then, I try to kill the comparison entirely. The second I find myself thinking, well, for only $200 more, I get X, I stop. That only $200 is a ghost. It's a trick of the light designed to make me stop looking at the total cost and start looking at the gap between two options. I have to drag myself back to the original question. What was I looking for before I saw this? And finally, I ask myself the one question that usually makes me feel a bit sick, but in a good way. If this better option simply disappeared from the earth tomorrow, would my life actually get worse? Usually, the answer is no. My life would be exactly the same, just a little bit lighter. I realized I wasn't craving the upgrade. I was just trying to avoid the discomfort of not having it. I look at this house now, the one with the premium view and the extra square footage, and I don't necessarily regret it. It's a roof over my head, and it's been the backdrop for a lot of good memories. But I see it differently now. I've stopped telling myself the lie that I arrived here through some masterstroke of logic. I know the truth now. I didn't fail, but I didn't fully choose either. I was just a man who walked into a room and answered the questions that were laid out on the table for me. I thought I was the architect, but I was really just following a blueprint someone else had already drawn. And that realization, it changes things. It makes you realize that the world isn't trying to steal your money with a stick-up. It's trying to guide your hand with a nudge. Menus are powerful, not because they force us to do things we don't want to do, but because they convince us we're free while we're doing them. They make the path they want us to take feel like the only path a sane person would ever walk. If this made you rethink just one choice today, even something as small as that laundry detergent, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's where the weight starts to come off. My name is Mark, and I'm still trying to learn how to see the scripts before they start running. I'll share a few more of these invisible milestones next time. Until then, pay attention to the menu.